Good afternoon. I'm Karen Holmes Ward. The Trump administration and his Department of Government Efficiency is forcing congressional Democrats to take on a slew of challenges, attacks on science, education, jobs, including green jobs. Massachusetts Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley is on the front lines of the resistance to the massive changes underway with the federal government.
We are going to litigate, legislate, agitate, and resist because you are worth it.
President Trump, with the help of billionaire Elon Musk, is cutting consumer protections, dismantling government agencies, and eliminating advances in civil rights and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based.
Some Democratic members of Congress joined protesters, pushing back. Pressley standing with them.
I am so tired of these billionaire boys and their grubby little hands grabbing at everything.
Democrats and scholars are calling Trump's actions an attack on the Constitution and vulnerable communities.
It's just a deliberate, calculated attempt to erase marginalized communities from government while eliminating essential services for workers, families, and the people that we are actually elected to protect.
Pressley reintroduced federal legislation to study reparations for slavery.
We're in a moment of anti-blackness on steroids, and we refuse to be silent. We will not back down in our pursuit of racial justice.
The bill, which had 130 co-sponsors in the last session, is unlikely to move forward as Republicans now control Congress. But Pressley is pushing the legislation anyway, inheriting the mission to support reparations from the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And Pressley says she's taking her advice.
She said, keep working on our priorities and never give up.
And joining me now is Representative Ayanna Pressley. Welcome. Glad to see you here today. We have so much to talk to you about. It's been just over a month since President Trump was sworn back into office, and he has been busy. Let's begin with Trump's executive order to eliminate all programs and work that's been associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, this is rolling back decades, just decades of policies that target systemic inequities that have affected Black people, women, underserved communities. What's your reaction, and what does it ultimately mean?
Well, diversity, equity, and inclusion means diversity means everyone. So that includes rural communities, that includes disabled people, the LGBTQ community, women, people of color, groups historically underrepresented and marginalized. Equity means an opportunity for everyone, and inclusion means in the American dream. So to dismantle and defund those programs will have a residual and domino effect for everyone. And it's not just a matter of values, it's also about our bottom line. So it will affect everything from your ability to access a Black doctor to government and procurement opportunities, and much, much more.
You know, you've said that an attack on DEI is a deliberate and calculated attempt to erase marginalized communities from government. What is the impact of these changes to these groups?
Well, you know, again, I think it's an effort really to resegregate society, and it has nothing to do with merit, as evidenced by the fact that the Trump nominees certainly have not been confirmed based upon their merit or their qualifications. So it is a rolling back of civil rights protections, progress, and advancement, and everyone will feel the impacts of that.
The reparations bill, what was behind the decision to reintroduce that bill in this political climate?
Well, again, I was very humbled that Congresswoman Erica Lee Carter, the daughter of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, asked me if I would assume the mantle that was initially taken on by Congressman John Conyers and then Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, respectively. This would establish a federal commission to study the vestiges and the impacts of slavery and to develop reparations proposals for the descendants of African slaves. and they would have 18 months to do that work. And it's holistic, it's comprehensive, and the reason why I introduced it is because although we have to be aggressive in the work of litigating, legislating, and mobilizing to blunt and mitigate the harms that are coming from this hostile administration, we also have to continue to do proactive, affirmative lawmaking. I'm not going to stop my advocacy for universal child care. I'm not going to stop my advocacy on behalf of small businesses for housing that's affordable. I'm not going to stop holding big banks accountable, and I'm not going to stop pushing for reparations, especially when there is movement throughout the country. There are dozens of municipalities, including in the city of Boston, that have established reparations task force, and many municipalities that are already doing the work actively of redress. And again, truth, reconciliation, and healing matters. And when you consider not only enslavement, but Jim Crow and redlining, we are still very much in a $10 trillion racial wealth gap, dealing with the vestiges of slavery, while this country continues to benefit from an economy that was built on our backs from sugar, tobacco, rice, and cotton.
And of course, we want the bill passed, but the other point is to keep the discussion going.
Keep the discussion, the momentum up. Again, as we're continuing, we've been making progress in the country, and I don't want to disrupt that momentum.
All right, now on to immigration. You represent the most diverse district in Massachusetts, and many of your constituents are immigrants. What have you heard from them, and have any of the neighborhoods in your district been targeted by ICE?
Well, what I'm using as an analog and a reference point for the moment we find ourselves in is the pandemic. It was wholesale harm. And then, of course, when you marry that with a hostile administration that is rolling out harmful executive actions by the hour, all these executive actions are meant to do things to people, not for them. And so what I hear from my constituents representing one of the most diverse congressional districts in the country is fear. I've been organizing Know Your Rights trainings, and I have to be thoughtful about when people come to these meetings if I'm making them more vulnerable. But I also want to say that although I can't personally say that there have been raids per se, the intent of these executive actions is fear. They mean to shock, to awe, to overwhelm. And so what has that meant? It's meant that children have not come to school. It's meant that parents have not gotten their children vaccinated. When I talk to our local community health centers, those numbers are down. There are people that are not showing up for work. Many people lived in mixed status families with DACA recipients, temporary protected status holders, asylum seekers. And so there's a fear. There's a fear of families being separated, devastated, and people being sent back to conditions in the country that are not safe, that are incredibly destabilized and corrupt.
Fear a strategy on behalf of the administration.
Strategy is most certainly a strategy. Fear is certainly a strategy of this administration. They mean to flood the zone, to overwhelm, shock and awe. And so even if many of their executive actions are not lawful, and the courts will overturn them, in the meantime, it does create that chilling effect. It's fear-mongering. And it is having an impact because, as I said, people are afraid to go to their places of worship. They're afraid to go to work. They're afraid for their children to go to school. And I'll just share with you, I've spent time with parents that have taught their children what to do if you come home and I'm not there. I've spent time with elders who are carrying all of their prescriptions around in the event that they are suddenly detained. So the fear is real. People are making frightening contingency plans and preparations. But again, we're going to do everything possible to ensure that none of these executive actions or efforts become real.
You joined some of your colleagues in reintroducing a bill repealing an outdated law that targets immigrants. Do you really see that bill going anywhere in a Republican-controlled Congress? And again, why did you support the bill?
Well, again, I think it's important while we do the work of mitigating the harm that is coming towards us hourly, that we still defend our values and affirmatively seek to advance those broader reforms and that systemic work that is necessary. What do I think the chances are? Look, I'm not a dolt. I've been a lawmaker a long time. I understand the legislative process. But it's hard to think about anything bipartisan. It's hard to think about their partnership on anything. When my colleagues across the the aisle have really been complicit in this wholesale harm that is impacting our shared constituents from rural, urban, and suburban communities across the board. They have completely conceded their congressional authority, including with the power of the purse, and are abdicating their responsibility. It is reckless. But that being said, I welcome any Republicans that are serious about doing the work of the safety and health and progress of our shared constituents.
Now let's talk about the cuts to research funding and the impact on Massachusetts. If you would, explain the impact of a 15% cap on indirect costs in NIH, National Institutes of Health funding, and how is that going to disproportionately harm Massachusetts?
Well, I mean, we're pace setters and leaders when it comes to medical research and advancement. And so, again, none of these executive actions, and certainly not the work of the Department of Government so-called efficiency, there's nothing efficient about making people sicker, poorer, or less safe. And so it would be devastating, both from an employment standpoint, workforce, but also in that it would slow roll these medical advances and progress to save lives.
Research and jobs in blue states aren't the only ones that are going to suffer. These cuts are happening also in red states as well. So how is Congress and your Republican colleagues reacting?
Well, you know,
there was a pregnant pause there.
Well, I'll just say this, silence is acceptance. And so they have been complicit to date in the harm. And it is irresponsible, and I think it is cowardice because they are just complying with whatever is coming out of this hostile administration that means harm for every person that calls this country home. I was organizing with federal workers in front of the O'Neill building recently, and someone had a sign in the crowd, a federal worker that had been laid off from doing medical research, and it said, "Billionaires get cancer too." And that is the point.
All right, more with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. She's going to be with us for the entire half hour. Stay with us. City Line will continue right after this.